Sometimes it happens in the middle of something ordinary. You're standing in line at a coffee shop, and the barista calls out a name that sounds almost like yours. You look up. It's not you. No one notices. The line keeps moving. It's a small moment. Easy to brush off. But something about it lingers longer than it should. You go through the rest of your day feeling slightly unseen. Not ignored exactly. Just not fully registered. And you start wondering why that feeling shows up at all. Why does it sometimes feel like you're present, but not quite included? Like you're there, but your presence doesn't land the way you expect it to? That feeling often gets called feeling invisible. Not in a dramatic way. More in a quiet, everyday way. And there are a few reasons it tends to show up, even when nothing obvious is wrong. For a lot of people, it starts with how attention works around them. One common reason is growing used to being the one who adapts. You listen. You adjust. You read the room. Over time, you become good at fitting in without taking up much space. It doesn't come from being shy or unsure. It often comes from learning early that things go more smoothly when you don't interrupt the flow. So you nod. You wait. You let others go first. Eventually, that pattern teaches your mind something subtle: being easy is safer than being visible. And later, even when you want to speak up or be noticed, your body hesitates, like it's still waiting for permission that no one is actually withholding. Sometimes, it comes from a different place. For a lot of people, it starts when attention feels inconsistent. Maybe there were times you were praised, and times you were overlooked, with no clear reason why. You never quite knew which version of you would be seen. So you learned to keep parts of yourself small. You stayed alert, watching for cues, adjusting on the fly. Over time, that can create a strange split. You're very aware of others, but less sure how you're coming across. When no one reacts strongly, positively or negatively, it can feel like you're fading into the background, even if people care more than you realize. There's also a quieter layer that doesn't get talked about much. In other cases, this feeling grows when your inner world becomes richer than what you show on the outside. You think deeply. You notice details. You feel things fully. But you don't always translate that outward. Conversations stay on the surface. Your real thoughts stay inside. So when people respond to the version of you they see, it can feel mismatched. Like they're reacting to a draft, not the full picture. That gap can make you feel invisible, not because no one is looking, but because what they're seeing doesn't match what you're carrying. Here's how it can play out in real life. It's early evening, maybe around 7:30. You're sitting at the dinner table with a few people you know well. The conversation is moving fast: stories, jokes, updates. You have something to add. Not something big. Just a small comment that connects the dots. You wait for a pause. It doesn't come. Someone else jumps in. The topic shifts. You tell yourself it's fine. You keep listening. But inside, there's a quiet drop. Not anger. Not sadness exactly. More like a soft question: did anyone notice I was about to speak? Later, when you're alone, that moment replays. You wonder if you should have spoken louder, faster, with more confidence, or if it mattered at all. If you've been there, you're not strange. You might know someone who lives like this. This is what feeling invisible can look like when it's subtle. It doesn't announce itself. It just leaves a small ache where connection was supposed to be. What makes this feeling tricky is that it often shows up even when people care about you. Even when you're included. Even when no one intends to overlook you. Because it's not always about others not seeing you. Sometimes it's about how practiced you've become at staying slightly out of focus. There's a gentle way to look at this that doesn't turn it into a flaw. You might start by noticing when the feeling appears. Not to judge it. Just to mark it. Was it after a group conversation? A meeting? A family gathering? Patterns tend to show themselves when you watch quietly. Another soft step is to check the story your mind tells in those moments. Often, it goes straight to something personal: I didn't matter there. They weren't interested. I disappear in groups. Instead of arguing with that story, you can ask one simple question: what else could be true? Maybe the timing was off. Maybe the room was loud. Maybe people were focused on their own thoughts. This doesn't erase the feeling, but it can loosen its grip. It can also help to experiment with small signals of presence. Nothing dramatic. Something simple. Saying one sentence instead of waiting for the perfect moment. making eye contact before you speak. These aren't techniques to change who you are. They're gentle ways of letting the room register you a little more clearly. Not every space will respond the same way. And that's important to remember. Some environments reward loudness. Some reward speed. Some leave very little room for quieter rhythms. Feeling invisible in those places doesn't mean you are invisible everywhere. It often means there's a mismatch between how you naturally show up and what that space notices. There's one more thing that's easy to miss. Sometimes this feeling isn't about visibility at all. Sometimes it's about wanting to be understood, not just seen. Being noticed without being known can still feel empty. So even when attention is there, something feels off. That's why this feeling can show up even in close relationships. Even with people who care. Even when you're technically included. Because understanding takes more than presence. It takes time, context, and a bit of shared space where things can unfold slowly. And not every moment offers that. So if you've been feeling invisible lately, it may not mean you're forgettable or unimportant. It may mean you've learned to be careful, or adaptable, or quietly deep in a world that moves fast. This is for people who show up, but don't always feel received. For people whose presence is steady, but understated. There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes the most grounded people are the least flashy. And sometimes being unseen isn't a permanent state, it's a signal. A sign that you might be in a space that doesn't quite match your pace. You don't have to force yourself into focus. It's enough to notice what's been happening, and to remember that being visible doesn't always mean being loud. Sometimes it just means being in the right place, with people who know how to look.